she put the engine in the front?" The question was punctuated by a burst of incredulous laughter that echoed through the dusty, sun-drenched workshop. The speaker was a young, sharp-dressed automotive designer from Volkswagen's North American headquarters, his voice a mixture of amusement and horror. He was pointing at a car that was both instantly recognizable and utterly alien, a 1971 Volkswagen Super Beetle, its classic rounded shape, painted in a cheerful canary yellow. But where the familiar trunk and spare tire should have been, the front hood was propped open, revealing the impossible, an engine. Not the small, air-cooled flat four that belonged in the back, but a complex, water-cooled, transverse-mounted engine, nestled between the front wheels in a triumph of fabrication and automotive heresy. But before we explore this shocking act of engineering rebellion, I want to ask, where in the world are you watching this story from? Are you in the United States? Maybe somewhere, in Europe or another part of the globe? Drop a comment below and let me know. And tell me this, have you ever seen someone take a classic, beloved design and completely turn it on its head, creating something that was both shocking and brilliant? Let's build a community that celebrates radical innovation. The group of young designers and engineers, all in their late 20s and fresh out of design school, were on a heritage tour, a corporate initiative to have them visit classic VW restoration shops across California for inspiration. In reality, it was a condescending exercise for them to look at old cars, confirm their own modern superiority, and take a few Instagram-worthy photos. Their final stop was Reed's German Garage, a small, old-school shop in a dusty corner of Southern California's Inland Empire. The shop was run by Evelyn Reed, a 72-year-old woman who was a living legend in the vintage VW community. She had been working on these cars since they were new, and her knowledge of air-cooled engines was considered almost mythical. The young VW corporate team, however, saw only a cluttered, outdated garage run by an old woman. They had been polite but dismissive until they saw the yellow Beetle. The car was Evelyn's personal project, something she had been working on in her spare time for years. When the designers saw the engine in the front, they couldn't contain their derision. "This is sacrilege," one of them exclaimed. "The entire philosophy of the Beetle is the rear engine. She's destroyed it." Another took out his phone to snap a picture. "Wait till the guys back at the studio see this. A front-wheel drive Beetle. What was she thinking?" They laughed amongst themselves, speaking in hushed but audible tones, confident that the old woman tinkering with a carburetor on a nearby workbench was half deaf and oblivious. They saw it as a crude, pointless modification, the folly of an old mechanic who didn't understand the sanctity of the original design. Evelyn Reed heard every word. She finished her carburetor adjustment, wiped her hands on a red rag, and walked slowly towards the group, a wry smile on her face. She was a small woman, with hands gnarled from a lifetime of turning wrenches, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent. "You find my project amusing, boys?" she asked, her voice raspy but strong. The lead designer, a young man named Liam, with an expensive haircut and an air of unearned confidence, stepped forward. "With all due respect, ma'am, we just don't understand the point. You've taken a perfectly balanced, iconic rear-engine car and, forgive me for being blunt, butchered it. You put the engine in the front. It's fundamentally wrong." Evelyn's smile widened. "Wrong? Or just different from what you were taught in a textbook? You see a butchered car. I see a solution to a problem." "A solution to what problem?" Liam asked, genuinely baffled. "The problem of traction. The problem of balance. The problem of taking a 50-year-old idea and seeing if it can learn a new trick," Evelyn replied, tapping a fender of the yellow Beetle. "But I suppose you're right. You're the experts from corporate. What could an old woman in a dusty garage possibly know?" She was gently mocking them, and they knew it. Their laughter died, replaced by an awkward silence. They saw her as a relic, a keeper of a dead technology. They had no idea that Evelyn, in her youth, had been a successful SCCA rally driver, famous for her ability to make underpowered VWs do impossible things. They didn't know that she held 2 engineering patents for suspension components she had designed in the 1980s. They saw only what was on the surface. The awkward standoff was interrupted by the arrival of another car, a sleek, black Audi A8 that pulled up quietly in front of the shop. The young designers immediately straightened up, their expressions shifting to ones of nervous respect. They recognized the car. It belonged to Dr. Klaus Richter, a legendary and famously reclusive figure within the Volkswagen Group. Dr. Richter, now in his late 70s, was a retired German engineer who had been a protégé of Ferdinand Ferry Porsche himself. He was one of the last living links to the company's founding generation. Officially, he was retired, but in reality, he was the company's soul, a roving consultant who appeared unannounced at design studios and test tracks, his opinion carrying more weight than that of any CEO. His arrival at this small, dusty garage was as unexpected as a spaceship landing. Dr. Richter emerged from the car. He was a tall, imposing man, impeccably dressed, with an aura of quiet authority that made the young designers feel like schoolchildren. He ignored them completely. His eyes scanned the workshop and then he smiled, a warm, genuine smile. "Evelyn? Is that you? You look exactly the same." Evelyn's wry smile transformed into one of genuine affection. "Klaus? You old dog? I heard you. We're in California. I should have known you'd sniff out the smell of old motor oil." The two old friends embraced, a reunion of two worlds, the corporate titan of engineering and the independent master of the garage. The young designers watched, their jaws agape. The old woman they had been mocking was on a first-name basis with the most revered figure in their entire company. Dr. Richter's eyes then fell upon the yellow Beetle. He walked towards it, his expression unreadable. The young designers held their breath, expecting him to share their horror at the butchered classic. Dr. Richter slowly circled the car, his expert eyes taking in every detail. He didn't look at the car with the horrified gaze of a purist. He looked at it with the analytical eye of a fellow engineer. He peered into the front engine bay. He crouched down to examine the custom-fabricated subframe, the reworked suspension towers, the neatly routed coolant lines. He ran his hand over the clean, precise welds. He was silent for a long time. Then he stood up, turned to the anxious group of young designers and spoke, his voice carrying the weight of decades of authority. "Liam, you are the lead on this tour. Tell me what you see here." Liam, flustered, stammered, "Sir, I see a 1971 Super Beetle that has been compromised. The engine is in the wrong place." Dr. Richter shook his head slowly, a look of profound disappointment on his face. "No, you see a car. You are not looking," he said, his German accent adding weight to every word. "Evelyn, would you do me the honor of showing these children what they are blind to?" He then turned to the young designers. "You came here for inspiration. Your lesson is about to begin." Evelyn chuckled, a mischievous glint in her eye. "All right, Klaus. Class is in session." She walked to the back of the Beetle, where the engine was supposed to be. She opened the rear deck lid. It was empty. The space had been converted into a surprisingly spacious, carpeted luggage compartment. The young designers exchanged confused glances. "But if the engine is in the front and the trunk is in the back, what did you do with the drivetrain?" Liam asked, his earlier arrogance now replaced by a hesitant curiosity. Evelyn simply smiled. "That's the wrong question," she said. "You're still thinking in two dimensions." She then walked to the front of the car, leaned into the engine bay, and did something that made no sense. She reached past the engine towards the firewall and turned a large metal lever. There was a loud, satisfying clunk from underneath the car. She looked up at the baffled designers. "Now, I'll show you." Evelyn Reed climbed into the driver's seat of the yellow Super Beetle, the worn seat groaning a familiar welcome. The interior was Spartan and functional, a stark contrast to the luxurious, screen-filled cockpits the young VW designers were used to. A set of auxiliary gauges for oil pressure, water temperature, and boost were mounted in a simple panel under the dash. The gear shifter was a custom-made short-throw unit that rose from the floor in a place that suggested a completely different type of transmission. She turned the key. The engine fired instantly, not with the familiar friendly clatter of an air-cooled flat-four, but with the deep, menacing growl of a modern, high-performance, water-cooled engine. It settled into a low, rumbling idle that seemed to make the very air in the workshop vibrate. The sound was utterly alien coming from the cheerful, classic shape of the Beetle. It was like hearing a lion roar from a canary. "Impressive sound," Dr. Richter commented, a knowing smile on his face. "But the proof, as they say, is in the pudding. Show them." Evelyn nodded. She beckoned for Liam and two of his colleagues to get into the car. Hesitantly, they climbed in, squeezing into the surprisingly spacious back seat. The car still felt like a beetle on the inside, but the sound and the vibration told a different story. Evelyn backed the car out of her workshop into the bright California sun. She drove slowly down the dusty access road that led to the main street. The ride was firm but controlled, not bouncy and soft like a stock Beetle. The steering was tight and responsive. As they reached the end of the road, she stopped, looking both ways down the deserted stretch of asphalt. She looked at Liam in the rearview mirror. "Hold on," she said, her voice flat. She then did something that defied their understanding of the car. She revved the engine, the aggressive growl building to a scream, and then she dumped the clutch. The young designers braced themselves for the squeal of spinning front tires, the inevitable torque steer of a powerful front-wheel drive car. But that's not what happened. There was no tire squeal. There was no drama. The car simply squatted down on all four wheels and launched forward with a ferocity that threw them all back into their seats. The acceleration was brutal, immediate, and relentless. It felt not like a car pulling itself, but like a car being pushed from behind by an invisible giant hand. 0 to 60 miles per hour came in what felt like under 4 seconds. The little yellow Beetle was moving with the violent acceleration of a modern supercar. Liam, the arrogant lead designer, was speechless, his knuckles white as he gripped the seat in front of him. After a quarter-mile blast down the empty road, Evelyn slowed the car, a cloud of dust billowing behind them. She pulled a U-turn and drove calmly back to the workshop, the engine rumbling with contained power. The designers stumbled out of the car, their faces pale with shock. They had just experienced the impossible, a Beetle that launched like an all-wheel drive monster. Dr. Richter was standing where they had left him, a broad grin on his face. "Well, Liam," he asked, "what did you feel? Did that feel fundamentally wrong?" Liam struggled to find his words. It launched. There was no wheel spin. It felt like it was all-wheel drive. "Exactly," Dr. Richter boomed. "Because it is all-wheel drive. And you, with all your advanced degrees and corporate titles, were too blind to see it." He then gestured for Evelyn to explain her creation. This was the moment the real lesson began. Evelyn walked to the car and began to reveal its secrets. The engine in the front was a highly tuned 2.0-litre turbocharged engine from a modern Golf R, producing over 400 horsepower. But that was only the beginning of the story. She had not just transplanted an engine, she had transplanted an entire drivetrain. "You were right," she said to Liam, her tone now that of a professor, not a scolding elder. "Putting a powerful engine in the front of a Beetle and making it front-wheel drive would be a terrible, unbalanced car. It would be an engineering nightmare. That's why I didn't do that." She then took the group to the back of the car, which was now raised on a lift. Underneath, where the original engine and transaxle used to be, was a complex, beautifully fabricated subframe. Mounted within it was the rear differential and multi-link suspension from the same Golf R. Running down the center of the car, tucked into the Beetle's central tunnel where the heater channels used to be, was a custom-made carbon fiber drive shaft. "This car is not front-wheel drive," she explained. "It is a fully integrated, all-wheel drive system. The engine and transmission are in the front for packaging and weight distribution. The power is sent to all four wheels. I had to move the engine to the front to make room for the drive shaft and the rear differential assembly. It was the only logical solution." The young engineers stared at the underside of the car, their minds struggling to comprehend the sheer scale and ingenuity of the fabrication. Every part was perfectly integrated. The custom-made axles, the reworked floor pan, the hand-formed transmission tunnel. It was a level of engineering and craftsmanship that they had only ever seen in multi-million-dollar concept cars built by major manufacturers, and it had all been done by one woman in a dusty two-bay garage. They had mocked her work as crude, but it was in fact a masterpiece of packaging and engineering, a solution so elegant and so outside the box that their corporate-trained minds couldn't even conceive of it. The lever she had pulled earlier, that was a custom-built mechanical linkage to engage the all-wheel drive system's center coupling, a fail-safe she had built in. Dr. Richter then delivered the final crushing blow to their egos. "You laughed at her," he said, his voice low and serious. "You called her work sacrilege. You who work for a company whose very name, Volkswagen, means the people's car. What do you think that means? It means a car for the people, a car that is simple, adaptable, and a platform for ingenuity. The original Beetle was a masterpiece of its time, but its spirit was never about being a museum piece. Its spirit was about clever, affordable engineering. What Evelyn has done here, this is the purest expression of the Volkswagen spirit I have seen in 20 years. He turned to look at the car with genuine admiration. She has taken the soul of the old, the classic, lightweight, beloved shape of the Beetle, and seamlessly blended it with the heart of the new, a modern, powerful, all-wheel drive platform. She has created a car that is both a tribute to the past and a stunning vision of the future. This is not butchery. This is genius. He then revealed why he had come to Evelyn's shop. He had been a young engineer at Volkswagen when Evelyn was making a name for herself as a rally driver. He had followed her career, her uncanny ability to get the most out of her Beetles. He knew her reputation as a brilliant, if unconventional, engineer. The board in Wolfsburg is planning a new all-electric concept car, he explained. They want to pay tribute to the classic Beetle. Your young design teams have produced dozens of soulless, retro-styled blobs that have no connection to the original car's spirit. They are all looking backwards. I came here, Evelyn, because I knew you would be looking forward. He turned to the humbled designers. You are the rookies, and this is your masterclass. I want you all to spend the next week here, in this shop. You will not design. You will not delegate. You will work. You will help Evelyn. You will clean parts, sweep floors, and maybe, if you are lucky, she will teach you the difference between designing a car on a computer screen and building one with your own two hands. The week that followed was a transformational experience for the young team from Volkswagen. Under the watchful eye of Dr. Richter, who sat in a dusty chair in the corner of the shop like a visiting professor, they became Evelyn Reed's apprentices. The arrogance and corporate polish were stripped away, replaced by humility and a layer of grease. Liam, the lead designer who had been the most vocal in his criticism, was given the task of cleaning the underside of another project car with a wire brush and a degreaser. He spent 2 days on his back covered in grime, learning a respect for the physical reality of a car that he had never gained in design school. The other designers were given similar menial tasks, organizing bolts, sanding body panels, cleaning tools. It was a baptism by fire, or rather, by dirt and hard labor. But as they worked, they also watched. They watched Evelyn move around her shop with an economy of motion that spoke of 50 years of practice. They saw her diagnose a complex fuel delivery problem on a vintage Porsche 356 not with a computer, but by using a simple vacuum gauge and the sound of the engine. They saw her fabricate a perfect patch panel for a rusted fender using an English wheel, a tool that was more sculpture than mechanics. They began to understand that her knowledge was not something that could be learned from a book or a computer program. It was a deep, intuitive understanding of how metal, fuel, and air interacted, a wisdom earned through a lifetime of trial and error. Evelyn, for her part, was a tough but fair teacher. She answered their questions, but she never gave them easy answers. When one of the young engineers asked her why she used a certain type of weld, she didn't just tell him, she handed him a hoe, welding helmet and a TIG torch and said, "Try it both ways. The metal will tell you which is stronger." She was teaching them to think with their hands, to trust their senses, to understand the why behind the how. The yellow Super Beetle, their initial object of scorn, became their central object of study. She walked them through the entire build, explaining every decision. She showed them her original sketches, her mathematical calculations for weight distribution, the dozens of small, ingenious solutions she had engineered to make the modern drivetrain fit within the classic body. They learned that the placement of the radiator, the design of the intercooler, the routing of the exhaust, every single component had been placed with a purpose, with a deep understanding of thermodynamics and chassis dynamics. Her crude creation was, in fact, a masterpiece of engineering efficiency. Dr. Richter's lesson was paying off. The young team's perspective was fundamentally shifting. They began to see the classic cars in Evelyn's shop not as outdated relics, but as elegant solutions to the problems of their time. They started to appreciate the simplicity and serviceability of the old designs. Most importantly, they started to see the spirit that Dr. Richter had spoken of. The spirit of the Beetle wasn't its shape, it was its philosophy of accessible, clever, and endlessly adaptable engineering. Evelyn hadn't destroyed the Beetle's soul. She had honored it in the most profound, A way possible by using it as a platform for radical innovation, just as a generation of hot rodders and racers had done before her. At the end of the week, the team gathered in the workshop one last time. They were dirty, tired, and profoundly humbled. Liam, the team lead, stood before Evelyn and Dr. Richter. "Ma'am, Dr. Richter, I want to apologize," he said, his voice sincere. "We came here as arrogant experts, and you've shown us that we are ignorant students. You were right. We weren't looking, we were just seeing. This week, this has been the most valuable education of my entire career. Thank you." Dr. Richter smiled. "Good. That is a beginning. Now go back to your design studio and design something worthy of the name on your building. Design something with a soul." The impact of that week was immediate and lasting. The team returned to VW's design center and scrapped their existing retro Beetle concept. Inspired by Evelyn's work, they started over with a new philosophy, not to copy the past but to learn from its spirit of ingenuity. Their new concept, codenamed Project Reed, was a small, lightweight electric vehicle, but it incorporated principles they had learned in Evelyn's shop: clever packaging, serviceability, and a platform designed for customization and adaptation. It was a hit. The VW board loved its authenticity and its connection to the brand's heritage. The car was fast-tracked for production. Dr. Richter made Evelyn an offer to become a permanent high-paid consultant for the project. She politely declined. "My place is here, Klaus," she said, gesturing around her dusty shop. "But you can send your rookies back here any time they forget how to get their hands dirty." She did, however, accept a single significant payment: a brand-new top-of-the-line TIG welder and a state-of-the-art plasma cutter for her shop. The tools were a quiet acknowledgement of her contribution, a gift from one builder to another. Her yellow Beetle became a legend. Dr. Richter arranged for it to be shipped to Wolfsburg, Germany, where it was displayed for a year in the Volkswagen Museum, not in the custom car section, but in the engineering prototypes section, right next to some of Ferdinand Porsche's original designs. The plaque next to it read simply, "1971 Super Beetle AWD, engineered by Evelyn Reed, a modern expression of the founding spirit." It became one of the most popular exhibits in the museum. The story of the front engine, Beetle, became a whispered legend within Volkswagen, a cautionary tale for arrogant young designers, and a powerful symbol of the company's renewed focus on its engineering soul. It was a reminder that the best ideas don't always come from corporate boardrooms or expensive design studios. Sometimes they come from a dusty garage, from the hands of a master who has been quietly perfecting their craft for a lifetime. It was a lesson that the spirit of innovation can be found in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the most radical act of preservation is to completely and brilliantly reinvent. So, as we finish this story, I ask you one final time, where are you watching from? What is the established rule in your life or work that you secretly believe needs to be broken? What is the wrong idea that might actually be a brilliant solution? Let me know in the comments below. Because Evelyn Reed proved that sometimes you have to put the engine in the wrong place to get everything else exactly right. She reminded an entire company that its soul wasn't in a car but in an idea. Let's build a community that isn't afraid to challenge the blueprint. Together.